Welcome to Back on the Broomstick,
a modern witch's spoken word grimoire,
where two witchy friends from way back are reconnecting to their pagan roots after a long period of mundanity.
We're rewalking the path of the wise and trying out all the latest spells, rituals, and magical theory in today's witchcraft and pagan practices.
So grab your wand and your incense,
your cauldron and your crystals,
and join us
as we get
Back on the Broomstick.
Hi, and welcome to Back on the Broomstick. I'm Layla.
And I'm Chelle. And today we have the greatest Amy Blackthorn.
Woohoo!
Right? Amy is the author of Blackthorn's Botanical Magick, Sacred Smoke, and Blackthorn's Botanical Brews. And she has been described as an arcane horticulturist for her green witchcraft. Now, she also owns Blackthorn Hoodoo Blends. She creates tea based on old hoodoo herbal formulas. Ooh, that's my jam. Amy has been a pagan for 28 years in various magical traditions, and she started her formal schooling in horticulture, herbalism, and agriculture more than 20 years ago. This girl is totally like my BFF, and I haven't even chatted with her yet. So we are going to talk to Amy about all things herbs.
Welcome to the show, Amy Blackthorn. We are very excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Before we get into all the wonderful things we want to talk to you about, Chelle and I were talking. We got a story. So I'm going to let Chelle tell her story because this is fun.
You're a part of the story and you don't even know it yet.
It's fantastic.
You know, a month and a half or 2 months ago, we were all at Sacred Space, which, by the way, folks, they've put out the dates for next year. Everybody should get a ticket and go because it's freaking fabulous. And the last, what was it, Layla, day and a half or so, everybody's mingling throughout the hotel and the conference. Are you enjoying it? Are you having a good time? And I just kept saying to people, and I never once said this to you, which is the irony at the end. I kept saying, my cup is full. My cup is full. So many great workshops, so many great presenters. My only complaint about Sacred Space is having to choose where to go in the time frames.
Yes. That is everyone's complaint. It's like, it's Sophie's choice. What are we doing?
Right? Now, Chelle was flush. I was a little bit of a broke witch, so I didn't have much. But Chelle now bought tarot decks and books and jewelry. She had goodie bags like you would not believe. She was walking around with one of your books, waiting to run into you.
Yes, I did. I had a couple. There were a couple of authors that I had to hunt down, and you were one of them because I am also a herb witch and a tea witch, and I love what you have to say about all those things. So we actually get stuff sent to us, and we did a review on our most recent Solarium episode of Blackthorn's Botanical Magick. So on an episode that you can catch our Solarium, you can hear all about that book. But I knew that was coming. So when we were there, I was like, I have to buy this book because I know I'm not going to get it. And this is Blackthorn's Botanical Brews, Herbal Potions, Magical Teas, and Spirited Libations. And I was like, damn it, I'm going to hunt this girl down and get this shit signed, okay? So I happened to find you towards the end, and I very fangirl-like asked you, and you were so sweet, by the way, so sweet. You didn't know me from anybody, and you were like, oh, absolutely. What you wrote, I almost puked on the floor, and I almost had to have Layla hold me up. Like I said, for the last day and a half, I had told people, my cup is full, my cup is full. This was so great, This is what you write, not knowing shit about what I said. Chelle, may your cup never empty. What the hell? So, now we see that you do intuitive services. Were you using your intuitive shit on me that day? Because how did you know that that's what I had been saying for the last 2.5 days?
I definitely didn't.
I'm like, Layla, look what she wrote. Look what she wrote.
The whole of the conference, your brain is just wide open, all this beautiful new stuff. And yep, that was just what came out.
You heard it in my brain.
And I think when you said you're wide open, that's really true. These workshops, I have never taken more notes in workshops, I think, in all my years of going to festivals and conferences. And I was happy to do it. We would go back to our hotel room and we'd be flipping through notes, be like, let's talk about this and let's talk about that and let's do this spread we just talked about, and really digging into it. There was a lot of magic and work there. So I'm not surprised that your intuitive self was like wide open and just receiving
But you just
things.
picked that shit right out of my brain. And I was like, how did she know? I'm like, Layla, you will not believe what she just wrote. Like, you won't. And it was just, the synchronicity was crazy. Blew my
It was
mind.
perfect. Since we're on the topic of your intuitive services, I was reading a little bit about you, and you normally expect to see people say, "Oh, I read tarot cards, or I read runes, or oracle cards." And I loved that you put that you were a professional intuitive, because while I also love tarot cards and osteomancy and all the different mancies,
You creepy bone people.
I also like intuitive readings. I like when people can really just get in touch with that energy. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, like what you do and how you get into that space?
Absolutely. I've been a professional intuitive since 1999, and I've gotten to read all over the place. I've been able to travel extensively for work, and I'll go to England or I'll go to Canada or I'll go, just anywhere that bebops around, and my brain says, "Oh, sparkle, sparkle, let's go there." So it's really wonderful to see how my style has changed over the years. Goodness, it's been 6 or 7 years ago now. A friend of mine messaged me on Facebook saying, "Oh my God, how are you on TV?" And I'm going, "What are you talking about, my love? Like, what are you on? I haven't done any TV in years." She says, "No, no, it's absolutely you." And I'm thinking, it's probably a twin or a lookalike.
Doppelganger for sure.
For sure. Until she sends me a photo and it's me on Netflix. It's
Oh,
me.
shit.
That was super duper for real me. I had forgotten.
How'd you get on Netflix and not know it?
And I
Tell us
didn't
the
know it.
spell exactly that you did.
This was a reading I was doing for a reporter. The Associated Press did the video of it to promote some work that we were doing for the news. And so they sold that footage to Secrets and Nick Latuska's top 10 secrets and mysteries. It was an episode on supernatural abilities.
Uh-huh.
And they called me a truly gifted medium. And I'm like, that's great, but I'm just a lady who listens to the air.
That's a good way to put it.
I worked at a shop in Baltimore called Mystical Voyage. At the time that it was open, it was the largest metaphysical shop in the United States.
Ooh.
Giant, giant, giant. But I would read for people all day, every day, for days at a time. We'd have big events. Had one called Spirit Fest, and you'd have 5-minute reading slots for hours just so that people could get in, and it was speed dating for psychics. You could get everybody's feel, see who you liked, who you didn't vibe with, like get a little bit
It
of
had to be
everything.
draining, though.
Oh
That's
my
all
God.
I could think of. Like, how did you feel after that? How did you recover?
At the end of the evening, a bunch of the readers would go out to dinner and just chat because my third eye felt like a sock full of hot nickels.
Right? Yeah.
It's like there's just nothing left except weird, uncomfortable things. And so it was grounding, it was eating, it was conversing, it was definitely hydrating because you are not hydrating for this time, you're not appropriately. And so it's wonderful to get to be able to recognize and listen to those intuitive voices that come, in my opinion, in my experience, over my right shoulder. Someone saying, "Oh, hey, think about this." I had a reading with a client 2 weeks ago, and she didn't ask for a mediumship reading. She just wanted some check-ins with her guides and her spirits. And we were doing this.
When the gates open, though, the gates open.
You are not wrong. So I get a lot of pictures. I'm a very visual oriented person. I am dyslexic, so I can 3D model anything. And so visually, things come in all the time. And so I'm getting this picture from my guides of Steve Urkel coming into the door over and over again on Family Matters, over and over and over again. I'm like, what in the hell is going on here? We have to go on this journey with our clients all day, every day. This is our job.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's starting to ask me, do I have anyone that's come forward? And I laughed. I didn't want her to think I was laughing at her, but I said, "Who is Steve? Like, what is happening? Who is Steve?" And she goes, "Oh my God, that's my dad." No preamble, no anything. We've just got Steve Urkel banging on the door to come in. That's her dad.
I love that. It's funny that you said that. And I liked how you said listening to air. because when I read professionally, for me, it felt like the back of my head. Like that's
Mhm.
where it just almost like I know the popular word now is downloads, but it literally felt like I was connected to something and it was coming in the back of my head, like pictures in the air.
Oh
And
yeah.
things like Steve Urkel pop up, and you're like, I don't know what the hell that means. Steve Urkel, really? But you have to say that. You have to
Yeah.
say that to the person that's sitting in front of you and try to describe that as best you can, because most of the time, like you found out, it means something to them. You
Right.
know, to you, Steve Urkel means nothing. But as soon as you say, who's
Yeah.
Steve and why are they coming in the door to the client in front of you, it clicks, they know. And then you start getting more information coming in from your left side, from the back of your head, wherever in the air you get that information. Once, like Chelle said, you open that door, everything starts coming in.
Yeah. It's
I
our job to
love
go on
that.
that journey with the client.
Yeah.
I had someone ask me about travel. They're like, okay, am I going anywhere in the next 6 months? And I said, oh my God, yeah, you're going right here. And I pointed to the tip of my index finger. And both of us sat there for a second, like,
That's
What does
weird.
this mean?
what the heck does that mean? And then I get a picture of my friend Lacey, and I realize that she's going to Michigan. My friend Lacey lives in Michigan. They use your hand as a map of the state. And so I said,
Oh,
I've got a tape of my index finger and a brown and white sign with a Jeep on it. She's like, okay, let's work this out. And so the tip of my finger, there's a state park right there. That hence the brown and white Jeep
With the
sign.
brown, yeah.
So I was like, oh, you're absolutely going here in Michigan. And there was a name associated with it. She's like, oh my God, my dad has a cabin there. She had no plans to go there, but she had a great time.
but that's part of the journey is
Yeah.
figuring that out and going where it leads you. And I
Mhm.
that's really cool. You have to trust. There's a lot of trust involved in that.
Yes. The listening isn't just to your client. That's a very big portion of it, but you also have to remember to listen to yourself. People who get this, oh my God, I can't do this, and it's so complicated. No, it's not. These messages are meant for you personally. Your
Mhm.
guides could not give them to you if you did not speak this language. Like there's no point in them wasting their energy to talk to you in Urdu if you don't speak Urdu.
Right.
So you have to recognize that this message was meant specifically for you. So either she knew who somebody named Steve, or I had to figure out why Steve Urkel was showing up in this reading because he's not on the cards. Like we've got to figure out where that door comes together.
The symbology is unique to each person.
Yeah, we've got to figure out what that has to do with where we're going. I was driving down the highway, oh, probably last year, and I'm driving, so there's messages and there's things that happen, and I see a tire spin and rocks like gravel shoot out from under the tire. And so I turn to my traveling companion and I say, hey, I still have a bottle jack under the back. We didn't pull it out when we went to Pagan Pride, did we? No, no, no. It's still there. It's still there. We're fine. I'm like, okay. They're like, why? Like, are we gonna need that? I'm like, I think we might need that. I'm worried that we might bust a tire and need to change the tire on the side of the highway. And just got like big flashing lights. And they're like, okay, that's fine. We'll look out for that. And probably 500 feet later, the car in front of me skids a little bit on the gravel. Gravel goes flying and it slams into my windshield and cracks the windshield.
Oh shit.
So it wasn't that I interpreted it wrong. It was that I didn't let the video play long enough. So we've
Right.
got to really figure out like, what does this specifically have to do with? You can't assume because we know what happens when you make assumptions.
Now let me ask you this. And we do have some listeners that feel they have the same ability in one form or another.
Yeah.
How do you turn it off? Is there a turn off switch? What if you got shit going on today and you can't listen and you need to turn it off? Do you have a way to do that?
Absolutely. 1,000%. Boundaries. Boundaries. This is the song of our people. Boundaries. We have
Those can
so
be
many
hard
people.
in the mundane world, let alone
Let
in the
alone this,
magical
yeah,
world.
yeah.
Yeah. A friend of mine, when she started talking to ghosts, she's like, look, dead people got a lot of time on their hands and I don't. How can
Right.
we figure this out?
I'm only available for conversation from 5 to 8 p.m. on Monday through Thursday.
Yes, boundaries, 1,000%. So we got her to the point where she dedicated a special hat that she would put on. So she had the sensory input that said, okay, I'm open for business. We can talk. Because you're driving your car and your brain starts to wander. You're looking around, but your brain turns off. You've been down I-95 1,000 times before, so your brain sort of checks out. And
Road
that's when people are
hypnosis.
like, "Oh, hey, can we chat?" No, I am busy. I know it doesn't look busy.
Oh, I see you're not busy right now. Yeah. Yeah.
So we dedicated a special hat. So if she put the hat on, she had the physical sensation to remind her, like, it's okay, we're open for business now. But really giving yourself permission to have those boundaries is the hardest part,
Right.
because they think, oh, well, if I'm getting this message, someone must need me. No, you need to take care of yourself.
Right.
They can talk to each other until you're ready.
Not to mention, it can be mentally and emotionally overwhelming,
So,
especially if you're new to it and it just feels like it's coming at you from all angles and you don't know how to decipher the messages, you don't know who they're for. And that can be a lot in the beginning until you kind of get to that point where you have your set ways and your boundaries set
yeah.
and things of that nature. So I just thought it might be a good question for the listeners on
Oh,
how do you
yeah.
turn it off if needed?
The first thing that I teach them is an egg shell. Like, how do I put myself in a little magical bubble and I can make it soundproof?
Hmm.
Ooh,
This tiny little egg. I love the egg as a first step for beginners, because you can paint on the walls, you can color it, you can add layers, you can add bricks, you can add barbed wire. But everybody knows what an egg looks like.
Hmm.
right.
Even if you've never eaten an egg, you're allergic to eggs, that's fine. The outside is personalizable. We're gonna go with that.
It's okay. Shell can't pronounce anything either. It's okay.
When you're ready to break out of it, you have that ability. I like
Yes.
that analogy.
Yep. I use a soap bubble, but I really like the egg because you can paint on it and build into it. I like that.
I like the soap bubble. It gives people, so when they have the egg down, I have them practicing, you stop at a stoplight, here's your egg. You walk into work, here's your egg. Because there's no holes in it, it gives you a nice firm base to start with. People say, "Oh, well, I'll leave a hole for my." No, no, we don't. If you leave a hole in it, your yolk falls out. We
That's
don't
right.
do that.
We don't do holes.
But we can modify what you're working with. If you'd like to talk to spirits, I have a leather jacket, my motorcycle jacket. I've worn for 20 years when I go out on my motorcycle. So I know the sensation of the leather. I know what it smells like. I know what it feels like. I know the weight of it. So I have a magical version of my motorcycle jacket that I put on when I'm going into situations that might be scary. I have a cloak that I wear when I talk to dead people. Like, this is a visual reminder for my etheric self. I'm not wearing it like I'm wearing my t-shirt. My spirit is wearing that cloak, saying, "Okay, we're open for business. We've got time."
But kind of like
Yes.
you translate that to the mundane world because when you put on your motorcycle jacket, you kind of get that sense of I need to be aware, I need to pay attention, I need to kind of be focused on this bike because you don't have that steel around you.
Exactly.
It kind of even in the mundane world, things can kind of put you either in or out of that sense.
Yes,
I'm a huge fan of using things in the mundane world to trigger magical world reactions.
absolutely.
And having an item like the hat for your friend that it's on your head, it touches your crown, it touches your third eye, possibly. It is literally something right there where your psychic ability possibly is. And
Hmm.
so that connects you in a way. Plus, like you said, it's a smell, it's a weight, it's a ritual. You do this enough times with that hat, and just the act of putting it on puts you into that space to speak to spirits. Or with your motorcycle jacket, it is literally an item to protect you. It is literally there to keep the skin on your body when you fall off your
Yes.
motorcycle. And
The whole
so the whole point of it, right? And so magically, the whole point of it is to protect you. It matches. And so it's very easy for your brain to latch onto those things. And when you involve all the senses like that, what does it smell like? What does it feel like? What does it look like? When you do all of that, it really helps to activate your magical brain. So using those as triggers I think that is so smart. I love that idea.
If you want detail, the whole process is outlined in Blackthorn's protection magic,
Awesome. Perfect.
in the psychic protection section, because we're talking about how to obviously keep ourselves safe. So if you're walking at night and it's foggy and it's dark and you're not sure where people are, like, how can I put on a psychic armor to protect myself? Well, you can
Mhm.
wrap yourself in your motorcycle jacket. You can put on your protection items. Matt Aron talks about it in Psychic Witch.
Love that book.
We
Yep.
chatted about this in January of 2019. We met at PantheaCon, And so it's 2 in the morning and we're talking about protection magic. And he's talking about actively projecting the psychic sound of a dog barking, like a big angry dog
Yes.
barking, just projecting it out from your person into the ether. And even if people don't think that they're intuitive, even if people aren't necessarily paying attention, the hairs on your arms will stand up and they will cross the street to the other side of the street, and it works. So offensive and defensive psychic protection are valid and real processes, but
Yes.
they're outlined in protection magic.
I actually find them just as useful in crowds of people,
Yes,
Yes.
honestly.
you're going to a concert and it's loud and people can't hear you. They can feel you.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I like your eggshell analogy as the barrier, as a
Uh-huh.
shield. You can use that because the inside of it is so perfect for writing on. You can make a sigil, have a magical sigil that you use for protection, and you can write that on the inside of your eggshell. And slightly different bubble, but I sometimes will put my bubble up, like Shell says, in a crowd. And I'm a very
Mhm.
short person. I don't take up a lot of space. It's very difficult for me in crowds. Okay, both of you tall
I'm
people.
the Amazon
I don't
here.
want to hear. You're
Okay.
both Amazons.
I will plow through a crowd for you.
But I don't need that because I have found very easy for me to put up that shield and I can walk through a crowd very easily and people tend to part
Part,
ways
part.
just because that energy is there and people tend to sense it. When you stare at someone across the room and have them look at you, it's kind of an aspect of that same magic. You can feel someone's energy.
You know what that's called?
What is it
What's that
called?
called?
It's called proprioception. When you feel someone looking at you and you turn around, they're actually looking at you. That's a real
Yes.
thing
Yes.
that we've discovered in our as part of our senses. You're in kindergarten, we talk about our five senses. It's a lie. We have many, many more senses, and
That's
proprioception is my
right.
favorite.
I have a real quick question for both of you. How come all this stuff in the pagan and witchy world has these freaking names that I can't pronounce?
Blame the Romans, I guess, Latin and Greek. I don't know.
Yeah.
Blame them.
It sounds like a great concept. I'll never be able to say that word ever.
And plus, everything sounds cooler if you say it in like ancient Greek or, in Latin or Greek. It just sounds
Until I
cooler.
pronounce it.
Proprioception sounds much more interesting than I stared at you. So,
How did you feel me staring at you?
right?
Like, it's a
That's a
real
type
thing.
of magic we all accept. Like everybody accepts the fact that you can stare at someone to get them to look at you. That's magic.
I do that to my boyfriend to make him wake up, and it works every time, and I giggle.
Right. And if you
Nice.
know that that is true, you can then create dogs barking to protect you.
Mhm.
Summon up Hecate's hounds and have them with you while you're on your
Walking
walk.
with you.
Put that
That's great.
eggshell, put it around you. People can feel that energy.
One of my favorite things about that is having Hecate's hounds with you. You'll walk differently. You'll appear differently. You're walking like you're like they sent you to kill Captain America. Like your spine is tall, your shoulders are down, and
The slow motion theme music walk.
yes, the stuff's exploding behind me, and we're just
Yes.
walking away. You can feel, and people can see that. They can't
Yes.
see the fiery ball, but they can see that your head's up, your shoulders back, your head is on a swivel, and I'm going.
You are protected.
I also think that part of however you want to phrase it, summoning these things or what have you, and like with the Hecate's hounds, if I'm picturing myself walking down the street, because I'm picturing myself with Hecate's hounds, I myself am going to present differently. So it's almost like it tricks your psyche into being that protection almost within yourself. You know what I mean? Like Layla said,
Absolutely.
you got your shoulders back, your heckles, like that is more than kind of that cowering. You psych yourself into protecting yourself almost as well.
And bad guys can see this.
Yeah.
You go from looking like a victim to looking like you can mess somebody up.
I literally just read an article about that the other day. That is so true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you bring in these magical protections, it also changes how you present yourself and more of it because you feel that confidence, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. Yeah. Mundane suggestion here. Gavin DeBacker's book, The Gift of Fear. Highly recommend it. Similar to what we're talking about here.
It's on the suggested reading list for protection magic.
Yeah. Awesome. See? More synchronicities. I love that. Yeah. Great book.
Now I want to kind of take it in a little bit of a different direction.
Since we're talking about books.
I know. You own a business called Blackthorn's Hoodoo Blends. Now,
Blackthorn's Botanicals.
Oh, Blackthorn's Botanicals.
Blackthorn's Botanicals.
Yes.
Can you talk to me a real bit about what's hoodoo? Talk to me. What is this?
American folk magic.
Oh, okay. I think people in the greater world maybe sometimes confuse hoodoo with voodoo, to
Yes,
be
it's a
honest
it's
with
a
you.
very common problem. Voodoo is a beautiful religion that if I wasn't a witch, I would get initiated into voodoo. It's such a beautiful, beautiful religion. It makes me feel so seen and heard.
So is it literally American folk magic?
Hoodoo is American folk magic,
Like
yes.
I'm thinking, Byron Ballard, Appalachian folk magic kind of thing. Am I on the right track?
Say Appalachian or Byron Ballard's going to throw an Appalachia.
Appalachian.
uh,
Southern American.
they're from the same tree. They're just
Okay.
different branches on that same tree.
Okay. Okay.
So Appalachian folk magic is here. Hoodoo is here. Everybody's got their own traditions. So a lot of this came out of the Congo and the African Americans being forced to come to the U.S., the Caymans, the Caribbean islands.
Haiti in
Um,
West Africa.
yes, and there's so much really incredible magic that has come from that. But the important part is that as a palm-colored person, when we talk about American folk magic, not everything is for us.
Right. Right. And
So
some things are closed, right?
yes, closed practices are super important when we're talking about respecting the trials and tribulations of individual cultures. Because if we take from that, we take it out of its context, I have my mugwort balm that I've created and I send it to somewhere across the planet without any attachments, it loses that culture. The culture is part of what we're bringing to individual practitioners when they talk about their own practices, their thoughts, their feelings, their experiences. I came to appreciate African traditional religions and the African diaspora through my father, who was a blues musician.
Ooh.
So we'd go. Baltimore has a great blues culture, starting from the 1890s when there's a big influx of people coming into the Baltimore Harbor port and bringing their culture with them. So there's actually a couple of really amazing, not just museum exhibits, but really in-depth discussions about what African traditional religions have brought to Baltimore specifically through those ports. There's a museum that I absolutely is amazing. If you ever are in Baltimore, please go and see it. Maybe next year at Sacred Space, you could take a day. But it's called the American Visionary Arts Museum. And it's a museum that is not funded for traditional artists who went to art school and learned how to sculpt. And here you go, here's a sculpture. That's not it. They want to support Indigenous artists, people of color, people who couldn't afford to go to art school, but still have the creative urge to make
Nice.
art.
That's
I
great.
With
love that. I
with
love
it.
that.
I'm getting goosebumps. But they had a really immersive and amazing exhibit, God, maybe 10 years ago, maybe longer. And it was all of different African traditional religions, deities, and spirits embodied in their art. So there was a king-sized bed that had been hand beaded with these little tiny, tiny seed beads to
Wow.
be an altar for Urzuli Freda. And there
Wow.
was a life-sized blue mermaid that was the embodiment of Mamiwata, the embodied spirit of the people who threw themselves over a ship rather than be transported to a new place. Her job is to collect those souls and love them.
That's
The salt of her
beautiful.
tears is
Yeah. It's a lot. It's
yeah.
heavy, and that's all wrapped up in it.
Oh my God, yeah. But you can't take green tea out of this context and
Right.
have the weight of that not come with it.
Right.
Right.
You have to honor those spirits and say this is part of what is happening.
Yes. And
It's
there's
so
no
And
removing little pieces. You can't remove a little piece and still retain the essence of the whole thing. It
right.
has to be all of it. And some of that has doors that we can't go through, and that's all right.
Yes.
That's okay.
And it's not for us, and that's okay. I was doo, doo, doo. It's more than 10 years. It's probably closer to 15 years now. I was taking a class on uh, it was a Mystic Saints and Sages class of Judika Illis. And I had been raised in the United States as an American child. So I had been given this oh, America's a melting pot and everyone's great and it's amazing and idea. And we were talking about that, and Judika said, that is the most racist thing on the history of this country. And I'm like, oh my God, who could say such a thing? What are you talking about? And she said, to be a part of this melting pot, you have to give up your own culture. You have to give up your language. You have to give up your spirit. You have to give up your holidays. You have to give up everything to fit into this little bubble that says this is what Americans are. And up until that point, I had never gotten that. It's not something that had my brain just didn't grok. Like it just didn't.
Right.
Right,
And
right.
it wasn't until that moment that I felt like I understood the amount of stuff that people have to give up to say that they're American. Other countries understand this because they're like, okay, you're American, you're this. You're
Right.
not like 1/10 Scottish and 1/10 Welsh. You're American. You have your own culture, but that culture is so, for lack of a better term, I think this is a really appropriate term, whitewashed.
It is.
It
And
is.
that's part of the problem. And when you talked about melting pot, that was something I loved as a kid. I never saw it necessarily as like a cheese fondue melting pot. I always saw it more as like a stew or a really great soup or a gumbo where everything all comes together with its own flavors and makes something better than it was. And that's what
Hmm.
I wanted it to be. That's what I in my, my corner of the world hoped it was, I guess, thought it was, but it isn't. It's more like the cheese fondue where it all kind of melts into this homogenized, pasteurized cheese product that is American.
And
And
I think I thought the same thing growing up, and it wasn't until I ventured out of my hometown and kind of, saw different cities, different states, and different perspectives when I
Hmm.
realized that I might have been misled as a younger person.
Yes.
you grow it, we're older, we know more, we learn more. And that happened in our religion too, because Amy, you were back there in the 90s, back in the day of this, and it was
Back in the day.
beautiful. It was wonderful, but it was also very exclusive and it had its own issues. We didn't
There was more
know it.
gatekeeping back then.
Yeah.
And it was more heteronormative and it was more very much from a white perspective and it had a lot of amazing things. I'm not taking anything away from that time period,
Right.
but now the whole
We know better and
religion
we do
has
better.
grown. Exactly. We know better, we do better. And that's what we're trying to, I hope that's where pagans as a whole are kind of going towards. So now that we've got some serious stuff out of the way, let's go back a little bit to some more of your books and
I need to
your
say a quote because this quote shook my world, okay? Damn first page of this book. Liquors are horticulture distilled down to its finest form. I never, in all of my days until I read this book, 30 years, never until now, did I ever think of alcohol as a damn magical brew, other than obviously, the cakes and ale piece of that.
Right.
I was like, this chick's a freaking genius. Freaking genius. I love this. Like I obviously I've been into the tea thing forever and a day, but I didn't realize that translated to alcohol. Go you.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Tell
you.
me about that. Let's talk about some liquor spells. What do we
Yes.
got here?
Oh my God. It's so great because I don't know if any of you are familiar with Amy Stewart's work. She's amazing and we love her. Um, she has a book called The Drunken Botanist. And
I
so
already love it.
it's amazing. Please go buy 7 copies. Um, she is really, really fantastic. She has a traveling museum exhibit that goes around. At this point, it visited the Delaware Museum of Natural History. And it was not only was it a fantastic adventure walking through these dioramas of botanical structures and things. They had a model of a dynamite tree. The fruit
Ooh.
explodes like a hand grenade. Oh yeah, it's dangerous, dangerous horticulture. But she it went into it was actually the exhibit is for wicked plants, the weed that killed Lincoln's mother, and other botanical atrocities.
Ooh.
Nice.
Yeah, such an
That sounds
amazing.
like it was a good presentation.
Yes, it is. It's an amazing book. It's a little hardcover green book, and so the exhibit built out of that book. And so we were talking about the Drunken Botanist. We had my brain's trying to say vetiver, vermouth. We had vermouth tasting from a local distillery in Philadelphia, And they
Ooh.
actually had all of the different botanicals that they put into it. So you could sniff a little bit of myrrh that had been
Ooh.
submerged in alcohol, and you could smell cardamom, and you could smell alligator pepper. What is it called? Uh, it's a alligator pepper is my favorite common name for it. You could smell each of the pieces of this puzzle, this botanical puzzle that they're creating vermouth out of. And it's like most people think of that green bottle in the back of the bar cabinet. It's a fortified wine. It's distilled wine that's sort of flavored with these beautiful, beautiful
Really?
botanicals, which means that it's meant to be used. The whole bottle is meant to be used, within a week or so of opening it. It's not meant to live in a bar cabinet for 20 years at the back getting dusty. So giving people permission to make it themselves really allows people to embrace the magic of each of these individual spices, flavors, aromas into the aromas that you're making. And it opens up these doors because so many people, especially when I was talking on tour for the Botanical Magic release, so many people came up to me and said, I can't be a green witch. I kill all my plants.
Chelle.
And it's like, my love, you don't need a garden. You don't need no one's checking. There's no licensing bureau. You're
Right.
okay. Let's do this.
I'm the
And
herb
so,
witch that kills things.
yes, yes. And plants can come to you for end of life services. That's
They
fine.
do. They
Everybody,
do.
She's the death doula for plants.
there we go. But it gives us permission to really dive in and expand experience and relate to the plants that we're working with by taking them into the kitchen, by taking them into the bar, giving us permission to really experiment with those things. It was really important for me to, both my parents are alcoholics.
Mm.
Every mention of an alcohol, whether it be absinthe, there's 5,000 words on magic with absinthe in that book, or something else. I wanted to make sure that everyone felt comfortable with what we're talking about. So if there's a magical use of absinthe, for example, there's also a sober substitution for those who are
Nice.
in
Yep.
recovery who still want to be able to work with the energy of these plants, but
But
aren't,
don't want the alcohol piece.
yes, for whatever reason, because it's no one's business but yours.
Right.
But it was really incredible to give people the permission that they were looking for to work with these botanicals. So we'll have something like absinthe, and there's, like I said, 5,000 words on it. So you can look at what each plant offers to each brew. So there's absinthe isn't just one thing. There's a whole list of herbs that are in it, and there's protection, and there's countering enemy attack, and there's the peaceful, dreamy side that people associate with absinthe, attracting tutelary spirits. We're looking at all of the individual ingredients that go into these pieces, and what does this magical math problem look like when we're done? So if you can take cardamom and infuse it into Lillet Blanc, which is a really lovely French wine, what's going to happen to it? What magic does it give that new brew that you've just created? And it's absolutely what people were looking for in the permission department. They want the book to say, hey, you can actually do this. So I wanted to make it as approachable as possible, first of all. So making your own sodas gives people permission to play in the kitchen. If there's strawberries that are going to go bad before you get a chance to use them, chop them up and throw them in and make a shrub out of them.
Now, my big question for you is, did you create a tea that is a hangover medicine for any of your liquor potions and brews?
Yes, not only did I do that, but I actually had my New Year's Eve party that year was based on tea cocktails because people get excited
Ooh.
and they're excited, they're having a party, they're doing all their things, and they forget to hydrate
Right.
by making tea cocktails.
Hydration is in the drink.
Yes, right there where we started. So everybody gets to feel fancy.
You can put herbs in it since it's tea. You could put herbs in it to help with headaches or to, all sorts of good stuff there. Like, or to have a good time at the party. You can kind of mix those teas up to be little spells. I love
Exactly.
that.
My biggest problem with tea is it makes me pee all the time. There, I said it.
Well, good. You need to.
It's good for you.
Hydration is important. My first spot was the very last day before Delaware went into lockdown for 2020.
Mm.
I'm picking up groceries. I'm making my last trips. And I'm a little nervous, a little anxious. Nobody knows what's going to happen. And so my brain says, hey, I want watermelon. And I look and there's the little $5 bowls of cut fruit that's ready to go. And I say, okay, I'm going to grab some watermelon. I'm going to take it home.
If they're $5, I need to move to Delaware.
You do. The bowl is this big and it's $5. So I get it home and I'm super excited. I told my brain I wanted a thing. My body said I needed a thing. Let's go do it. And I got it home and I cram it in my face hole and it tastes like TV static because I forgot that it's March and watermelon does not grow in March.
Right.
And so my body said, I wanted this thing for the flavor and now I got nothing. So I said, okay, well, I'll make a shrub out of it. I'll make it for practice. We'll see what happens. There's no flavor that I'm tasting as I'm eating it. So there's no harm in it. I will waste a little bit of sugar to see what happens. Scientists and witches right here.
Can't hurt.
Right here,
Can't
same
hurt.
place.
So I get my 1 cup of watermelon, I used a Prosecco vinegar, really lovely, and then 1 cup of white sugar. And I put it in a bowl and I let it sit on the counter for 2 days. What happens is the vinegar breaks the cell wall of the watermelon and it releases all the sweetness and water and sugar and all of that into this syrup that we're now making. I'm gonna make sodas with it.
Ooh.
Nice Italian watermelon soda. Let's do it. So I strain all the watermelon out. I put that in the refrigerator. I'll put that on over ice cream later because it's already tastes like sweet syrupy watermelon. Don't throw that away.
Mm-mm.
The best was the strawberries in balsamic vinegar
Ooh. Ooh.
ice cream.
Ooh.
And guess what happened? All of that flavor that was not present on my tongue when I went to eat it had been released into that syrup that we were making. So I had watermelon sodas for the next 3 months. I had, just a
That
little
sounds
sip here, a little
delicious.
sip there. It's amazing. It really is. But it lets all of that, the sugar and the sweetness and the water and all the things that are missing in out of season fruit, it's hiding inside that fruit. It's there. We just don't know it. So it let all of that out, and I was able to make really gorgeous watermelon sodas. And in the evening, if I happen to put a tipple of some Uncle Val's Botanical gin in there,
Mm.
Okay.
it's a cucumber forward gin with sage, lemon, and lavender in it.
Ooh.
So I had a little watermelon cucumber cocktail happening.
This sounds like
Ooh,
summer in a
just-
glass.
It
Right?
is. And the fact that I needed that because it was March and I was stuck inside and there's a pandemic happening and we don't know if the world's ending. I wanted some summer in my life.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about recipes. So this is a hot topic online, and I actually bookmarked a recipe from your book, and I want to hear what you have to say about this. So the TikTok, I call it the TikTok. It's my thing. The TikTok and the Facebook. I feel like everybody on the planet is getting hexed, and the ones who aren't want to do hexes. Like, I don't know what's going on here now. You have
It's an epidemic of cursing and hexing just flying willy-nilly all over the
Right.
place.
So you have this hex-breaking mint and grapefruit tonic with rosemary syrup. I want a hex so I can drink this because that just sounds delightful. So I want to just quick talk about what are your thoughts on everybody on the internet being hexed and your brews to break said hexes if you feel that that has been put upon you.
The great thing about the recipes from the book is that you don't have to have an excuse. Protection magic is a cyclical responsibility.
Yes.
So
Oh my God, I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. A secular responsibility.
So when we talk about our protection magic, we should not only be responsible for our warding or our protections when you think something's going to happen.
Every day, even if
Every day
nothing
is
happening.
part of your responsibility as a
Yep.
magical practitioner to maintain
Regular magical hygiene.
yes, proper magical hygiene is important. If we're doing that, that means we're switching it up. So some people will say, "Oh, well, I burn lavender every full moon. I'm fine." Are you though?
Are ya?
Because one, if you do it every full moon, and your best friend since the 6th grade knows that you do this every full moon, if you are no longer friends, they know how to get around your experience.
It's almost like you know the loophole.
Exactly. Yes. So the other problem with that is if you have a purple spotted monster that lives in your attic and he's not allergic to lavender, he's going to stay there forever. If that's the only thing you're doing. By rotating through the things that you know and understand about your magical practice, you wind up avoiding the magically resistant staph infection hiding in your attic.
Right. Good analogy.
Thank
The
you.
greatest analogy. Like I adore the way you think.
See, and this is why she's such a good writer. This is why I love reading your books because you have all this.
I do think that that is an important thing, though. And I think people learn one method of, say, protection, for example, and they're just going to keep doing that. That's their go-to over and over. Part of the fun of it is learning different ways. And I kind of want to segue back to your forte of herbs and botanicals. What is your favorite herb or herbs to kind of throw in to various things, whether it be protection or happiness or money? Because we all know that there's herbs that have multiple uses. Talk to me about your favorites, because with all these books, I know you have a couple.
That's evil, though. I do have a couple, but having to pick one, it's like, oh my God, what do I call one?
If you had to go on this crazy magical spiritual adventure and you could only take one or two or okay, three, we'll go
Give her
with three.
three. Let's give her
You
three.
can only
Three.
take three herbs with you for any use you might need. Go.
Mugwort, dragon's blood, and cloves.
Ooh,
Nice.
interesting trio.
Nice.
I like that. Okay.
Yes.
That's
yes.
very
So
potent trio.
you have the dreamy responsibility covering your etheric, psychic, intuitive bits in the mugwort. Dragon's blood has that fierce protection magic, and it smells amazing. And clove brings luck to you. It can works really well for protection magic. The thing about protection is it's not one thing. You know, if you learn one method of protection and you rely on that, then if all you have is hammer, everything starts to look like a nail.
Right.
So if you are looking at I can bring clove with me to this magical desert island. I can set it up as a protection ally. I can work with it as to bring luck into my home, whatever that's going to look like on a deserted island. Everybody's got their own jobs. So protection magic could be, I could look at citruses. They've got a solar association, and that solar light brings light to anything that's been dark and muddy and sort of neglected.
Mm-hmm.
I could bring clove and have the fire to burn away anything that's negative before it even gets into my airspace, so to speak. So nobody is just one thing. So yeah, those three plants are definitely at the top of the list.
And that was one thing when we did our solarium episode, and we did 4 books, and one of them was I want to make sure I get this title correct, the Blackthorn's Botanical Magic book. I like that you have a little section where you talk about the different not correspondences, but like if I have bay leaves, I can use it for this, and this. If I have mint, I can use it for this, this. None of this stuff has one use. And that's why I wanted to know what your 3 favorites were.
Yeah, because when we look at it, we're taught this list of correspondences that no one is going to remember. Please don't feel like you're supposed to memorize all of this stuff. There's so much to learn.
That's what a book of shadows is for, folks.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
We have the opportunity to work with and learn from these individual allies. That's great. But if we take it that extra step further and say, hey, if we, rather than buying one oil for each material, I've got a hex shattering oil recipe and I need to make a bunch of different stuff. I've got to buy 6 oils. Rather than expecting anyone to be able to afford to go and do all this, we can provide them with one oil that'll do a million things rather than 6 things to make one oil.
Right.
I grew up and there's homelessness, there was food insecurity. Like, it's really important to make sure that everyone who approaches witchcraft doesn't feel like they have to spend $1 million on all the fun accoutrement. It's fun. Go do that if you can. But please don't ever feel like you have to do that to be a witch.
Right.
Not a thing.
And that goes along with, in this book, there's a lot of kitchen herbs, things that you would just normally find in your kitchen. And I love those. Like coriander. Since Chelle brought it up, Blackthorn's Botanical Magic, you talk about coriander. And you list all these different uses. And the listeners of this show know, if you want to get rid of unwanted guests in your home, turn your broom upside down. And that's a good, simple folk spell, some Appalachian folk magic to get people out of your house.
But what can I use Italian seasoning for?
But if you want to make it a little...
It's a protection melange.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything in there can be used in protection magic.
Yeah, you take coriander, you put it on your broom, you put it on your windowsill, whatever, that helps, and you take a little something from just your kitchen. You don't have to have anything. Dragon's blood is awesome. I love it, but you don't have to have it. You can use something else.
Absolutely. There's always another thing.
Exactly.
Does one of you have botanical magic in your hand?
Yes.
Open it up to the back.
Okay. What do we need? I'm in the back.
In the indexes, you'll see an index of all the recipes in there, and they're grouped by subject.
Grouped by subject. Yes, they are. Air scrying. Okay. Yeah, I see that.
So if you look at that, I wrote that index myself. It wasn't like somebody who came in and just wrote down an index.
Nice.
So what we have is not page numbers to find hex shattering oil. We have the plant in which that section is found.
Gotcha.
So if you're looking at the hex shattering oil, I think that's in clove.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at hex-breaking spray because it has my favorite rosemary in it, which I love.
Yes.
That's another one that you can use
For a lot of
pretty much
things.
everything. So I love that it's in the hex-breaking spray. But yeah, right in the back, you have different recipes, centering oil, clarity incense, under mental powers. It's all broken out very nicely. I love
But what
that.
you're looking at is not really an index. What you're looking at is a ready-made substitution list.
Perfect.
Ooh.
Look at that.
Ooh.
Sneaky.
Yes. Very sneaky. Very sneaky.
That's
I
why
love
you're kick
this.
ass.
Thank
Yeah,
you so much.
Yeah,
This
you
is-
really do. These books are so much fun.
They read like a conversation, not like a lecture.
Yes, and interesting, an interesting conversation. It's not just boring lists. They're interesting books to read through. It's not just recipes and boring. So thank you
Thank
for
you.
that, because those are very cool.
I have one more question/topic I wanted to ask you about. Now, you mentioned you don't have to be a rich witch to do this, and it's
Right.
not about money spent, and it's not about, how pretty your stuff is. Can you talk to us for a minute about foraging, the do's, the don'ts, the etiquette? What is the benefits or the negatives to foraging your own, as opposed to maybe going to Home Depot and spending money you don't have?
They sell herbs at Home Depot?
They
Yeah.
do. Yeah, they have a whole landscaping
A
section
garden
outside.
section. That's
I
right.
have
There you
garden
go.
section.
Usually potted, like you're not getting it ready to,
That's true.
yeah. But talk to us about foraging for a minute. Like I said, the kind of the do's, the don'ts, the etiquettes, don't kill yourself, that kind of stuff.
So the first thing is good sharp scissors and a pair of gloves. I know it sounds obvious to know that these parts are really important, but they are important for magical reasons as well as mundane reasons. So the next book that comes out is Sacred Plant Magic. It's the sequel to Botanical Magic.
Ooh.
I'm excited about
When's
this
that
one.
coming out real quick?
September 2nd. The idea is that with the scissors and the gloves, you're providing the healthiest option for the plant from whom you are deciding to take material. If your scissors are dull, if you just try and rip it off, you're doing a lot more damage to the plant than you are the plant that would benefit from some sharp scissors. Okay.
Not to mention, I try to be thankful and kind of thank it before I kill it.
Yes.
We're not
killing
killing.
anybody. That's the second rule of foraging. You take no more than 1/3 of that plant material.
Okay.
We're not ripping anything out of the ground. We're not taking anything that we can't have. One, we're respecting the plant and saying, hey, do you mind if I take this piece? I need it for X reason. And the plant can say yes or no. And that looks different for every practitioner. You might feel a lightness or a lifting for a yes and a sulken, downward, muddy feeling for no. But you've got to figure out what that looks like for you as a practitioner. I start with the lightness and the heaviness for new students, just looking for that. So we're only going to take 1/3 of the plant material that's available. 2, you're going to look for some of the out of the way places because 1, people's yards don't get shot over some plant material that you could find another way to get.
Private property is private property, folks.
Yes. 2, if you go to a nice, well-maintained park, they may spray a lot of chemicals around to make sure that that park is maintained.
Right.
So you have no idea of what's been sprayed, how recently,
Right. Yeah.
what could be an issue. So if you go to a field and you meet a sunflower that just happens to be there, and that sunflower is either non-communicative or gives you a no, and you move to the next plant, and that one says no, and that one says no, and that one says no. There's probably a reason. There could be pollution in the water table. They could have been sprayed with something recently. They're dying and you don't know it because you weren't there the whole time.
Right.
So please don't take it personally if a plant was like, sorry, dude, we're not doing that today. because there's going to be a reason whether you know it or not.
It's a good way to put it.
So you have your sharp scissors, your gloves, because there are plants whose poison is transdermally absorbed.
Or there's thorns.
Or there's thorns. There's all sorts of
Prickers.
places where you're looking for a nettle. Obviously, you're going to want gloves. There is a trick to it, by the way. Those nettles, urticating hairs are all pointing upwards because they're trying to protect from stuff coming from above. So if you come from below, those nettles don't sting you.
Hey,
You could just pick them with your bare hands.
good tip.
But we're not killing any plants. So we have our materials, obviously a basket or something to hold whatever you're cutting. A good field guide, Peterson's is the one I usually recommend, especially if you're in North America. Peterson's has a lot of individual pieces, but it's broken up by the shape of the leaves. So if you have no idea what you're looking at, you can look it up by, there's a palmate leaf and opposite branching. You can actually look it up based on the characteristics if you know nothing else about the plant.
I do know enough to know to be careful of the apps. Like if you're using a plant identifier app, I know that you should be very cautious, even if using something like that.
Yes, the same with books, because anybody can publish anything at this point. Self-publishing is a thriving industry, which means that people are publishing AI content as a book like they know what they're talking about. AI does not know what it's talking about. It's a large language model. It knows what people put into it. So there was a joke this morning. Someone had used a plant identification app, and they were looking at a mushroom to try and figure out what mushroom it was. And because it was AI generated, it came back with, that's a button mushroom. So go ahead and eat that.
Actually, I saw your post on that and laughed my ass off.
Because since we're in radio land and cannot see the face that I'm making, this mushroom was not a button mushroom. It was a destroying angel that will liquefy your intestines. It will liquefy your liver. They'll be able to pour it out of your body during your autopsy, and it takes days to die. By the time you feel sick, it's already too late. You are dead.
I have a mushroom rule. If I didn't buy it at the grocery store, I ain't going near it.
That is the next rule of foraging. If you're not 1,000% sure of what it is that you're talking to, do not put it in your body.
Right.
Don't do it. There's look-alike plants that are poisonous. We talk about the lost colony of Roanoke. Who remembers this from history class? The colony of
Lord,
Virginia
I
just
do.
disappeared off the face of the earth, and they don't know what happened to it.
One of my first mysteries I learned of.
One, they emigrated to a different island because everyone died.
They ate something they shouldn't have.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you know what they ate?
What?
How many people are familiar with Queen Anne's lace?
Oh, me? Like a wild carrot, right? Or something?
Yes, there are 3 plants that have the same exact look. The only difference is the little blood drop in the middle of the Queen Anne's lace. So wild carrot looks exactly like our friend, the Queen Anne's lace.
Mm-hmm.
The wild carrot and Queen Anne's. And the third is a hemlock.
Oh, shit.
Oh, yeah.
So they dug up, they thought they were looking at wild carrots, and they dug
Oh,
up
shit.
batches and batches of hemlock, roasted it, and then the whole town ate it.
Oh, shit.
And they all died. There are lookalikes when you're looking at foraging. If you don't know how to tell the difference, that's why I specifically mentioned Peterson's field guides, because again, we're not looking at AI generated content, but you're making sure that each of the pieces that go across are all falling in line.
One book I got about 30 years ago is actually, it was put out by the military, and it is a military field guide to North American plants. And you wouldn't think that a military guide would be good for pagans, but
So is
it really is. It really is.
because it's written for the lowest common denominator. Somebody who knows nothing
Right.
can pick up this book and say, what is this thing that I'm looking at?
Because it was kind of built more for if you were forgotten in a forest, how are you going to make it until they come get to you? And if you have to eat, what is around you, what was safe and what was not safe? You're right. It was kind of dumbed down to the average person and not very scientific-y. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because you have to hand it to somebody who's grown up in Manhattan and never seen Angelica plant before.
And 18 years old and just enlisted in the military. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So my military field guide has always been kind of a good backbone for me.
Absolutely. 1,000%.
There are a couple simple things that people can get as long as you're careful, like you said, to make sure that no pesticides, you ask permission and you leave them. But a couple of things that I like to wild forage are mullein.
Oh, yes.
I love me some mullein, but you have to be very careful because that grows a lot on the side of the road. You can find that on the sides of the roads, and those get sprayed a lot with pesticides.
Hmm.
Not to mention all the emissions from
Oh,
vehicles on
yeah.
it all day. Yeah. You can do the Mullen torches.
I
Yes.
was just gonna say, did you make hag tapers out of them?
Yes. Yep. 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 Shell and I are going to try that. We just learned about that last year, I think. So we're going to make those, and that'll be a lot of fun. So I love to forage mullein. That's pretty easy. There are lookalikes. So again, you still have to be careful. Dandelions. I love
Mm.
dandelions for all sorts of different edible and magical purposes. And little violets. You can find little violets in the grass, and those are pretty easy.
Yep, they're all in the family of pansies, violas. They're all in the same family, so
Yeah.
you can eat them, you can roll around in them. It's great.
So those are ones that I really like for summertime, spring and summertime. I feel very, I don't know, very cottage core, very, witchy forest goddess core, going out with my basket and my gloves and my little sharp knife and cutting mullein and dandelions.
So your next job, your next homework that I'm going to give you is in the next couple weeks in your area, those mulleins are going to start flowering. They're going to shoot up their little hag taper and they're going to start flowering. This beautiful, brilliant yellow blooms are going to start appearing. And so what I want you to do is go and grab some fractionated coconut oil
Okay.
in a 10 milliliter bottle.
Okay. That's the one that stays
And-
liquid at room temperature, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Grab your little tweezers if you use them, and those individual mullein flowers, put them in your 10 milliliter bottle. You're going
Okay.
to infuse the mullein flowers and to make earache oil.
Ooh.
Okay.
This is a great way to get rid of those ear infections.
Where the hell were you when my 30-year-old kid was like 4?
Right here, apparently.
Damn.
Yeah, actually, she was at Blessed Be and Meet Me with us
Right?
when
Yeah.
your kid was that age.
I just didn't get the earache oil from her.
That's right. So mullein flowers, the little yellow mullein flowers that come out. It's a big tall stalk,
Yep.
and it's got these little teeny tiny flowers all up it. So I'm going to grab those with my little tweezers and I'm going to put them in my fractionated coconut oil. Now,
Yes.
how long do I let them infuse
Just
for?
leave it forever.
Leave,
Just-
just leave them right in there. Okay.
Leave them right in there. A lot of people, they're very strict with their, I'm going to make a tincture and I'm going to let it sit for 8 weeks in a cabinet. I'm going to shake it every day and then I'm going to strain out the material. You don't have to strain out the material. You really don't.
Okay.
If you want to bottle it down, that's fine. That's where we're going.
You sound like
but-
me making my fire cider in the fall.
Exactly. 1,000%. Yes. Make your fire cider. Do the things.
But you don't have to strain it.
You don't have to strain it.
But if that's your thing,
But
by
if that's your
all
thing,
means,
absolutely, you're
strain it.
fine. You're not hurting anything. I love making, and you'll find this in Botanical brews, I love making my own vanilla extract.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes.
On TikTok, they've got a couple companies that sell splits, so you can make it super cheap. What happens is if the pod is left on the vine a day too long and isn't harvested right away, they can split open. And when they split open, they can get dried out. And people say, okay, well, they're not as glossy and shiny and pretty, so we're not going to sell those as the first tier of
Oh.
vanilla beans. But being a little bit dried out means that you get more bang for your buck. So people say, oh, I just put it in vodka. That's no. You're not making yourself available to the materials that you have. Brown liquors have been aged in barrels. So they already have vanillin, the chemical component that gives vanilla
From
its
the-
fragrance,
Oh.
in the material. So a nice whiskey that's been aged in a barrel is going to have those caramel notes already. You're already ahead of the curve if you use whiskey instead of vodka to make your vanilla extract.
Now you're talking my language. I'm there.
I wonder if my shitty whiskey will work with that, Layla.
Yes. Find that's what.
Yeah,
use
don't
it.
waste the good stuff. Use the
Don't
shitty
waste the good
whiskey on your tinctures.
If you've ever heard of Black Velvet, I apologize now, but I just can't help myself.
A friend went to a really beautiful bourbon tour of Kentucky, and they get driven around in a bus, and they go to all the different distilleries and places. And they brought me back this really super expensive bourbon in a little like 1 ounce bottle, super pretty. And I'm like, oh, this is really gorgeous. I don't drink a lot of whiskey.
What'd you make into it?
What could I do? I just crammed a vanilla bean right into that bottle and made it into
Oh
extract.
yeah, that was probably fantastic vanilla.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Now, I am the PSA queen here, it seems like. So I do want to just put out there, like Layla and I always say, we're not doctors, we're not medical people.
Yes.
Check with whoever you need to check with before you ingest or whatever, any of this stuff. And if you fuck up, don't blame us.
Exactly.
So now that we've talked about alcohol and we're wrapping up here a little bit, I do have to say, I see you have your sacred smoke book and all that,
Mhm.
and you have alcohol blends for
Mhm.
spells. When are you going to have a book about my favorite smokable spells? I like to mix cannabis and herbs to do spell work, and I would love to see what you have to say about that. That
It
would
comes
be.
out on September 2nd.
Yes. Sacred plants, correct?
Sacred Plant Magic
Sacred plant
gives you
magic.
the idea of Sacred Plant Magic as the sequel to Botanical Magic was here's a way to work with plants as embodied spirits with agency.
Yes. Yes. Oh my
So
gosh, yes.
one of the friends that we get to meet in the book is cannabis.
Which is very alive. The green goddess speaks so clearly, especially as a growing plant.
There's a whole section on the individual terpenes that pop up, what they
You
do,
are
how they
making
work.
Layla fangirl right now, by the way.
I knew I couldn't wait for this book. Now I really can't wait for this book.
And it's great. So people think, oh, the terpenes are just something that gets added and it sounds. I'm like, no, no, no. If it has a smell, there's a benzene ring attached to that chemical component. There's going to be scented components in it. So I actually link it back to the essential oils and the plants that carry
Ooh.
those terpenes so that
Ooh.
people understand this is naturally occurring and nobody's messing with your materials. No one's messing with your plant allies.
Woman, I love you.
Layla's
Yes.
jumping out of her skin right now, jumping out of her
The
skin.
terpenes are
So
so important.
So the beta myrcene that you look to relieve pain is also found in clove bud oil. This is how we link all of that stuff back together. We want everybody on the same page. There's a gummy recipe in there that will knock your
Mm,
socks off.
okay. Okay. I
Are you
like
going to be
that.
doing are you going to be doing a workshop on this? That's what I need to know.
Always. There's always
I
another
love
workshop.
that. Yes, yes. Now, because this is the workshop that I did at Sacred Space was very much the same thing. We talked about the terpenes and different types of cannabis and how you can use that in your spell work, combining it with different herbs to create a literal smokable spell. And so I cannot wait for this book. I
I'm
love
so
this,
bummed that I missed that at Sacred Space. So this is
right?
fantastic. Just like the whole day.
Well, right back to too much good stuff in too little time frames.
That's right.
I don't
That's
like
right.
having to pick between awesomeness.
No, see, and that's why we keep inviting people like you on, Amy, because it was so fun to meet you there, and your workshops were fantastic. So we're definitely going to have you back in September to talk about this book. It's like you wrote it for me.
Yeah, I did write it for you.
Thank you. I appreciate
She
it.
wrote you a book and picked out of my brain.
That's right. That's right. It's fantastic. We must have set this up back at Blessed Be and Meet Me back in the day when we were all
And that
together
everybody's
there.
holding hands for a reason.
That's right. We were holding hands in that circle and this just all came together. We just didn't know it then. That's all.
That's all.
So
I
thank
just
you
can't
so much,
believe it.
Amy.
A 2 year long festival, and we all happen to be there. I can't believe it. I just can't believe it.
Right? What
In the
are
same
the
ritual, at the
odds?
same time, in the same moment, on the same day, completely not in our own backyards.
No.
Right.
And now here we are again, all together. I love that. Back on the broomstick, as it were.
Yes.
Amy, it has been an absolute honor to chat with you. I was fangirling when you autographed my book, and we're still fangirling. You are awesome, and we definitely need to have you back. And I hope you will be able to find time to come back and chat with us.
I had so much fun. I would do this any day of the week.
Awesome.
I will tell you that I have 2 books coming out in that 10-day span.
Ooh.
On August 20th, I have Social Media Magic coming out.
Yes, that was the
So-
workshop I loved of yours. Yay. I
So
can't wait.
we'll have to talk about that.
Good. See, now we got 2 excuses to get you back. I love this. Keep writing books, woman.
Real quick, tell us the names of the 2 books and when they're released. Tell us how to find you on your socials, and tell us any in-person workshops that people might, if you're going to festivals coming up, I know it's festival season, where can people check out you and your
Yes.
awesome info?
So the next 2 books are Social Media Magic. That is 366 ways to get witchy on the web. It is a spell a day calendar designed for magic on social media. It's a beautiful little hardback. It's adorable. There's a little kitty cat and a laptop on the cover. It's adorable. So Sacred Plant Magic. It's the whole title is Blackthorn's Book of Sacred Plant Magic. Comes out on September 2nd, and so that'll be available. wherever fine books are sold. They're both available for pre-order right now. If you're not going to remember to go to the
Layla's
bookstore,
pre-ordering.
Yeah, I'm doing it right
pre-ordering these,
now, actually. So go ahead and join me on pre-orders. They help out. So let's give Amy
they
some
really
love and do some
do.
pre-orders.
And even if you don't like shopping with big box stores, those pre-orders help. If you plan to buy it from your local shop, which please support your local businesses, still do a pre-order and they'll let you know ahead of time. Oh, you still have time to cancel. But those pre-orders really help
Right.
your author friends.
What are your socials?
You can find me on TikTok talking about all things witchy at Amy_Blackthorn_author. On Instagram, it's all one word, Amy Blackthorn author. You can also find me on Facebook at Witchcraft Down and Dirty, Amy Blackthorn author. The Blackthorn Grove, my podcast, has a Facebook page. There's all sorts of great places. You can also book a reading with me, since we talked about those. amyblackthorn.as.me. So Amy Blackthorn as me. You can book appointments from half an hour to 2 hours and anywhere in between. I just want you to know that these are available. So there's a whole sheet of testimonials from different people who have had readings with me over the last 25 years.
I've read
Oh
some
my
of them.
God,
It sounds like you're awesome. So Chelle and I will probably be signing up, but we will have links to all of this in the show notes, and make sure that you can check her out wherever she is online. Make sure you can get books.
Buy the books, people.
Oh,
Buy the
yes.
books.
If you're interested in buying something that's in the backlist, amyblackthorn.com has the first 30 pages of every one of my books free to
Ooh.
download.
Oh,
I want you to know that you want my voice in your ear when you're talking about protection magic or sacred smoke or botanical magic. And any minute now, the preview for sacred plant magic is going to drop, and I'll post that on all my socials, because when people are able to check out the first 30 pages or so, it really gives them an idea of what I'm talking about, what my voice
Try it
sounds like.
before you buy it. Yeah.
We love try it before you buy it.
Will you please send Layla that link directly before her head explodes?
Yes, yes, I will.
Okay.
yeah. I've already ordered the free copy. So yeah, I'm definitely interested.
Yes.
Thank you again, Amy, for joining us. This has been wonderful. We appreciate all of it. We will catch you on your socials, and we will have you back later this fall. So thank you
This
again.
made my whole week. Thank you.
Oh, good.
Thank you so much, Amy.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Amy Blackthorn for joining us on Back on the Broomstick. We had an amazing time, and I like to think we made a new friend.
Absolutely. No, we totally made a new friend. Seriously.
She's amazing.
All right, folks, we want you to check us out on our socials. Like, share, comment, send us a message. We are Back on the Broomstick on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, even and
YouTube.
Back on the Broomstick at gmail.com.
So we will see you next week. Be wise, be wicked,
And keep it witchy.